Welcome to the How to Create an Effective Resume workshop. Really excited about sharing this information with you. And so, what I want to start off with first is, and let me go here, is just to share with you what is the purpose of a resume. And let me let you know that because sometimes people say, well, I really don't have that much to put on a resume. How am I ever going to, get a casting? My resume isn't very strong. Let me just tell you, your resume doesn't get you a job. And I'm not saying it's never happened before in a lifetime, but uh, look, somebody could have graduated from, Yale Drama School and has this unbelievably impressive kind of resume with all kinds of, work on it. The fact is, that doesn't get you a job. What gets you a job is number one, if you have the right look for the part, because most of us, um, you we have to play with a certain type that we have. There are movie stars who can play against type, but typically you've got to look the part. Then, once you look the part, they'll bring you in to read. And, if they really like what you did at the audition, then you will have, a good chance of booking the job, even if your resume isn't incredibly impressive as compared to other people who might have, an amazing resume. So the resume doesn't get you the job, but let me tell you how the resume will be invaluable to you. It will be really helpful to you as far as getting an agent. It also can be incredibly helpful to you in getting the audition. So I just wanted to make sure you know about that. But I'm going to teach you how to create a great resume so that you will have a better chance of getting called in to read and also for representation. So here's the purpose of the resume, and it lets other people know more about you and your experiences. Now, for people who go to an event, sometimes you're going to be creating a very different kind of resume than you would out in the real world. If you're going to an event where there are uh, industry professionals and you're handing in a headshot and resume, quite often they want to know a little bit more about you personally, and that can be really very helpful to them. Um, After the event is over and your headshot and resume are being submitted to casting directors and other industry professionals, they really don't care too much about the personal aspects of your life, and there are other things that they are looking for. So part of the resume is to let people know more about your experiences, also learn about your skills, which is something we're going to be discussing in more detail. Also, and this is something that a lot of people really don't take the time to really flush out properly, and I'm going to do that with you, and that's your training. Because for people who, let's say, are just getting started, you haven't had a whole lot of experience on sets, if you've had great training, that can be really, really helpful to you. But also, there are certain ways of listing your training that will really benefit you greatly. And just as I know this isn't a purpose, but let me just say this as an overall comment. You never want to lie on your resume. And you might be thinking, why would somebody lie on their resume? It happens all the time. And sometimes people feel that they need to pad their resume with, more things that they have done that they really haven't done, or maybe list certain skills that they have that maybe they're really not that skillful at. And let me just tell you, you do not want to lie on your resume. And I'll tell you, there are a couple of reasons. One, for me, part of it is just like it's a moral thing. I mean, it's just not a good way to run your business by lying on your resume. And assuming that you're not even getting caught with it. Let me give you a real life example. Casting director once told me there was someone who came in and she was looking at the person's resume, very impressive, and noticed one of the plays that she had listed on her resume. It just so happened that the casting director's husband directed the play that this woman said that she was in. She was not in the play. She knew everybody in the play. And I guess she wanted to torment the actor a little bit before kicking her out. And she started saying, "Oh yeah, I heard the director of that play was really very tough guy, really nasty." This is her husband she's talking about. And the actor was saying, "Oh no, no, we got along really well. It was a great experience, blah blah." And they kept going on for a couple of minutes. And then at one point, the casting director said, "Look, my husband directed the play. You weren't in it. You can leave my office, and you will never have an opportunity to audition for me again." So, besides the fact that it's just not a good way to run your business by lying, um, there's no need to do that because, once again, your resume doesn't get you a job. So, be honest with your resume, and it really will help you tremendously in the long run. Okay, so some of the things that you um, absolutely do not want to have. I'm just jumping here for 1 second. Uh, so went through that, and actually I had just like this little glitch with the PowerPoint, got it back. Let me also just tell you a few different ways that you can attach your resume to your headshot. And there are a variety of ways of doing it. There's not one right way. Um, and let me also just tell you, there's no one right way to put together a resume. Now, there are some very specific things you definitely do not want to do. We'll talk about those as well. But there are a lot of different ways that you can put this thing together. I'm sharing with you the ways that I put together my resume. It's been very helpful to me. But I'm not saying that mine is the only way. So, as far as attaching your resume to your headshot, there are some people I know who will literally just print their resume right onto the back of their headshot. And I'll tell you where that could be useful. I've never done that, but I'll tell you where it could be useful. Let's say you're going to uh, let's say an open call for theater auditions. I know like in some areas they're called the leagues. And you might have, I'm just making up a number, let's say there are 20, 30 different theater directors there. You're at an event and you're going to be, handing out a limited amount of headshots and resumes. Yeah, that'd be fine too, because you're going to be using all those up in one day, and you can print your resume right onto to the back of your headshot. Now, just be very careful that you look at your headshot to make sure that none of the text bleeds through your headshot. I remember one time seeing somebody's headshot and I noticed that there were words going through the person's forehead, and it was because they printed it on the back and some of the text just kind of bled through. That's not a good look for your headshot. But if it's a very limited run, sure, that would be fine. Some people like to glue their resume onto the back of their headshot. Now, also remember, your resume has to be 8 by 10. It has to be cut down to 8 by 10, just like the size of your headshot. You do not want parts of your resume sticking out. It just looks very unprofessional. And so for me, I do have a cutting board that would easily allow me to make those cuts. What I normally do though is when I have my resume printed at just a local printer near me, I pay the extra fee and have them cut it because they'll just do a better job at it. And like I said, you want it to look good. But anyhow, some people will put glue onto the back of their resume and then just kind of smash their resume onto the back. I don't like to do that. Number one, if it's not lined up perfectly and it's a little out of whack, then you're trying to shift it and then it might not move properly. I'm also concerned it might get separated at some point. It just seems messy and tricky. I don't like doing the glue method. Some people use self-stick paper. There's a certain kind of paper that you can buy where one side you print your resume on, the back side it's glue. It has a sticky substance to it, and you can just slap it onto the back of the headshot. It will stay on really well. I don't like doing that either, besides the fact that it's expensive. But I'm also concerned, like, if it's not laid on there exactly right, it's just not going to look good. There are some people who talk about they want to make sure that if they're at an audition, that whoever is watching the audition will have an opportunity to make notes on your read. So they will only staple one corner of your resume, and that way the person can lift up the resume, make notes on the back, on your actual headshot. I really don't subscribe to that theory either, only because there's always room on a resume, to make a note or two. I'm also afraid with one staple, or even if you have two staples on top, so you can lift, up the resume, it still might get separated. So, and become unattached. So what I do is I like to staple all four corners of the resume, and I know it's going to stay there. And here's the other part that's pretty neat. And this just happened to me. So I just booked and shot a new. Well, it's not that new of a television series. It's in its second season, and it's on AMC. And so I wanted to update my resume. And I had, I don't know, 15 or 20 headshots that I have, that I bring to auditions and other places. I have in different bags that I take. Um, but I didn't want to just throw out those headshots. So because I staple all four corners and I don't glue anything together, I just take a little knife or a pair of scissors and I just take the staple off, pull it out, separate the old resume and just attach the new one and staple it in the same holes that the old one was in. And that way I can save the headshots. I don't have to throw them away. And it makes it really easy to update them that way. Okay, so information listed on your resume. So here's some of the basic things that you absolutely need to have. Certainly your name. And and I know most people would say, well, of course you're gonna have, I've seen resumes that don't have people's name on it, so that's why I'm listing it here. Make sure it's nice and large in bold, just so it, the top of the resume, just so it really stands out nicely. You also want contact information. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Contact information could mean a number of different things. If you have, let's say, an exclusive contract with an agent, then you are going to want your agent's contact information. Your agent does not want you to post your personal information on a resume if you have an exclusive contract with your agent. Now, if you're working in other markets, and you're allowed to do that according to your contract, then you're going to want to have your information. So here's part of the question. So what do you put on there as far as a phone number? Let me share this with you. And I was doing a workshop. This was a while ago, and a woman told me about this, and I just thought it was so incredible, and I want to make sure I'm sharing this with you. Now, I am not at a place where I am really concerned about people stalking me and things like that. So I do have an office, I have a home office phone number on my resume. However, for those of you, don't have a home office, some of you might only have, a home phone number or maybe only, use a cell number. You might not necessarily want to give out your personal cell phone number. The fact is, you never know who's going to get their hands on your headshot and resume. And I'm not trying to scare you or frighten you, but this is the reality. I mean, there are crazy people out there who will go through trash cans of agents, casting directors, producers, and all of a sudden they might, pick up a headshot that somebody received and threw away, and they see a picture and they go, oh, she's very pretty, and then they flip it on the back and there's your personal phone number that you've just given out to the world. So here's something that you can do. It's absolutely free and it's amazing. It's called Google Voice. And here is the website for it. It's just google.com/voice. And what you do is you go to the website, you will fill out some information, like, for instance, a zip code, and they'll ask you for a few other things. And then all of a sudden, you will get a list of a number of phone numbers that you can use for your personal phone number. And what is so great about this is that you set it up so that when somebody calls your Google Voice number, it will get forwarded to whatever number you want it to ring on. So if you want it forwarded to your cell phone, then that's where it's going to go. That way, you're not giving out your personal phone number. The other thing, too, is when you use Google Voice, when it rings, if you have it forwarded, let's say, to a cell number, you will know that it's a business call, assuming that you're using your Google Voice number just for, let's say, acting or modeling. Uh, you know it's a business call. And if you don't answer it and somebody leaves a message, you get it in a text format. It's really great. So that's something you might want to consider using on your resume instead of your personal phone number. Now, you also want an email address and a website if you have one for your email. And this is really another topic, but I'm just going to throw it out there right now. Your email address is really very important. You don't want to have an email address that maybe you used when you were 13 years old, if you're not currently 13, but let's say you're 30 years old and you still have, love my red pajamas at AOL.com. That's not like a really good professional kind of email address. So if you can, try to get your name in there. I use Aaron at aaronrobertmarcus.com. I also use Aaron at howtomodel.com. But whenever I'm doing acting stuff, I'm always using my Aaron at aaronrobertmarcus.com. And I would have done Aaron at aaronmarcus.com, but somebody already took that one. So I had to use my middle name. But maybe you could use a middle initial or something like that that just is more professional. For your oh, and by the way, for a website, if you have a website, great, put it in there. If you are listed on somebody else's website, whether it's an agent website or whether you use other companies where you've got photos, where you have your resume listed, maybe where you have videos or voiceover work listed, certainly you can put that one up there as well so people can see more of your work. For statistics, on your resume, you're going to put hair, eyes, height, and weight. Some people ask about, should I put my age? Never. You don't put your age, and it has nothing to do with, oh, we're actors, we don't want to give out our age and things like that. Here's the reason why I think you should never put your age. The same thing for age range. Some people put age range down. I don't recommend doing that either, because let your photo sell you. Let's just say your headshot makes you look like you are 30 years old. Let's say you are really 38 years old. So if you put age range of 35 to 38, or you actually put down 38 years of age or something like that, and somebody looks at the headshot and they go, yeah, I think she's right for this. We're looking for a 30-year-old. And then they flip it over and they go, oh, nah, she's 38. She's probably a little too old for that. So let your photo sell your age and your age range. If your headshot does not allow people to see what age they should be casting you in, then your headshot isn't a very effective one. For credits, you're going to put down, if you have these: TV, film, theater, special skills, and education. Those are the major categories. And I'm going to go into a little bit more specifics about those categories in a second. Okay. So let me just scroll down here. Here's some information that you never want to list on your resume. And the reason why, once again, I'm mentioning these because I've seen these and it's just not a good idea. I've seen some people put down a home address because they want to let people know they live in the area, they're close to where the project is happening. Once again, you don't know who's getting their hands on your resume. and you don't want to give out a home address. Never, never list a social security number. Also, and once again, I'm just kind of jumping a little bit, but it's on my mind and I want to share it with you because it just kind of hit me. Sometimes when you go to an audition, you have a sign-in sheet, and sometimes they will ask for a social security number on the sign-in sheet. My recommendation is never write in your social security number on that sign-in sheet. If you are in the union, you're in SAG-AFTRA, typically it will say social security or a union number. You always just put in your union number. If you're not in the union, I would leave it blank, and I'll tell you why. Once again, you don't want your social security number floating around the world. The other thing too is the reason why they ask for that is because if you book a job, and I believe the amount is $600. If you make $600 or more, they send you a W-2 during tax season, and so they need to have your social security number. So wait until you actually book the job and you're filling out paperwork for them, and if the job pays more than 600, then certainly that would be fine, but not on a sign-in sheet. It's just too dangerous to do that. You also never want to list anything that has to do with modeling or pageants. And then I've had people say to me, but when I've done pageants, I've had to get up on stage, I've had to talk, I've had to perform, I've had to do different things. People still have what I think is a misconception. Oh, you're a model. You can't act. Now, meanwhile, there are so many well-known actors who started off as models. I think it's kind of silly to think that because you're a model, you can't act. But people still have that mentality. So do not list anything on there that has to do with modeling or pageants. Now for extra work, and that's an interesting topic because when I do my private online mentoring programs with people, sometimes they will, ask me, well, should I list extra work? Typically, I will say no. You do not want to list extra work, and let me tell you why. When you are hired as an extra, that does not indicate to anybody that you have acting skills. Now, there are plenty of really skilled actors who do extra work, but you don't have to be a skilled actor. If you get hired to walk up and down a street, or if you are getting hired to be one of 10,000 people in a stadium, that's not necessarily needing any acting training or acting experience. So you're really not letting the casting director know or the agent or other industry professionals know that you are talented just because you've done extra work. Here's the one exception, and the one place and the one time where I would list one or two extra roles. If you have nothing else that shows that you have any kind of experience on a set, then I would put down extra work. But I would also make it very clear that you were an extra, and I'll show you exactly how to do that in a second. There have been a number of people who I've worked with who did extra work, and they will place, the name of the project, and they might put bartender down, and then they'll put the name of the either production company, producer, studio, or director, on the right-hand column. And they are trying to make people think that they, were a day player, had a co-starring role, as the bartender. You don't want to try to fool people that way. It kind of goes back to the whole honesty thing, because if somebody questions you on it and they says, oh, for that TV show, you had listed bartender. And you said, yeah, I was a bartender. Really, were you cast in that? Did you audition for that role? And then all of a sudden you're going, oh, no, I didn't. It makes everything else on your resume suspect. So if you do decide to list any extra work, and once again, I wouldn't list many, I would list a couple, one or two things. In parentheses, let's say by bartender, I would put extra. And that way you're making it really clear, you're upfront, you're not trying to fool anybody, and it lets people know, okay, the person's been on a set, they know what they're doing on a set, they've experienced this. That could be helpful to you. Aside from that, and if you have anything else that you can put on your resume, then leave the extra work out. TV commercials. Um, you never, with once again, one exception, you never want to list TV commercials because let's say you did a TV commercial for, let's just say McDonald's. And let's say that it ran 2 years ago and it ran for 2 months and it hasn't been airing for many years. If you list McDonald's under TV commercials on your resume, and let's say there's a new audition that's happening for Burger King or any other competitor to McDonald's, they're going to look at your resume. They're going to say, "Oh, worked for a competitor." You're probably not going to get called in to read. They might look at it and they might be thinking, "Well, I don't know how closely connected you were. They don't know if it's still running. They might not want to spend the time contacting you or your agent to find out, if you're on hold for this thing, if it is still airing, you'll probably not be brought in to read for this." So what you want to do is put list available upon request. And once again, you're not trying to be coy or anything. You're just saying, look, I can send you a list if you need it. Nobody, I can tell you, after over 30 years in the industry, nobody has ever asked me to send them a list of television commercials that I've done. All they care about is, do you currently have a commercial running that is seen as a conflict? So just going back to the McDonald's, let me give you a real life example. So right now I have a commercial that I shot for Colonial Williamsburg, and it's been airing everywhere from like New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, DC. I don't know if it's been in North Carolina or not, but anyhow, it's like mid-Atlantic. And right now, it's currently on hold, which means they're not currently running it only because they're not doing any advertising for Colonial Williamsburg, which is normally like more of a summer kind of place. So they're putting it on hold. Hopefully, they will start airing it again, maybe April, maybe May. So if there's a audition for any other kind of place, like King's Dominion or any place that would be seen as a competitor, then I would let the agent know, or if I was contacted directly, I would let the producer, casting director know, hey, I'd love to come in and read for this. I do want to let you know that I am on hold, or if the commercial's running, I do have a commercial running for Colonial Williamsburg. Is that a problem? And they might say yes, they might say no, depending on the different company. So that's just another reason why you never list this stuff, but you want to let people know if you do have any conflicts that either you are on hold for, which means they're holding it, they're not currently airing it, and they're paying you for that, but they might air it in the future. One thing, you want to be honest because you don't want to be in a situation where you say, oh no, I don't have any conflicts, and you do another commercial, and now you've got two competing companies that you worked for. There can be some really serious legal ramifications. So anyhow, list available upon request. That's what you should put, and that way you're not potentially cutting yourself out of auditions. Here's the one exception. Let's say you did a TV commercial that's not going to have a competitor. Let's say you did a TV commercial for a local television station. I guess maybe a competing station, but maybe it's a charity you did something for. Maybe it's a public service announcement. There are some things that would not be a problem. And so that way you're not worried about competitors. Font size, or fonts and the size of the text. Here's just the general overall rule. You want to make this very readable. You want to make it really simple for people to be able to see it and not have to like smush their head up against the resume to be able to see it because, the size of the font is too small. This is not a time or place to be very creative with your font either. I mean, sometimes I've seen font with almost like calligraphy type of font. You want it plain, you want it simple, you want it very readable so somebody can very quickly glance at it, see it, and understand it. So here are a few. Look, you can play around and find some on your own. The ones that I like and typically use not only for resumes, but for a lot of my emails and things like that. I like Times New Roman, Calibri, and also Arial. They're really very easy to read and they just look nice on paper. Font size. Now, partially it will be dependent on how much information that you actually have on there, but I would say 12 point is normally pretty good. I wouldn't go any smaller than 10. So somewhere between 10 and 12. Most importantly, if you hold, your resume out in front of you, if you can easily read it, great. Like I said before, cut the size of the paper down to 8 by 10, and you've got to keep your resume to one page. And if you're concerned, well, I've got too much, then you've got to start narrowing it down. You've got to start deleting some of the information and put, the best information out there. Okay, so how to describe your credits. And this is where a lot of people make some mistakes. So I like, and once again, there are different ways that you can do this. And in one of the bonuses that you get, you're actually going to get my resume and you can actually see it very clearly how I have it set up. But I like having 3 columns. And in the first column, and this is, I'm just taking one example per a few different categories here. So like for TV, there was a TV show that I did called Do No Harm. That's in the left-hand column. I put a little bullet there. It just makes it really easy to see. Well, you don't have to have a bullet, but anyhow, for here, it makes it very easy to see. Now, for the second column, I will put the name of the character that I had. Now, sometimes you might you might be a day player, meaning you worked on the show for a day or the project for a day, and you will get a co-starring credit, but you might not have a character name. That happens all the time. As a matter of fact, um, I recently shot an episode of Gotham, and I was actually booked for 4 days. It was a co-starring role, and my character, it was and I because it hasn't aired yet, I can't really say much about it, but I was given a description of the character without a name. If you see, when you see the show, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But in either case, sometimes you might not have a character name, and that's okay. But then what you want to do next to it is put down how this role was cast. So I am, well, not so much cast, but how is it being described? I'm a co-star. And something that you can always do if you're not sure, are you guest star, are you co-star, are you, lead, whatever it is, you can always ask someone in production what category you are considered. Sometimes you can go to the person who's working on scripts. You can go to somebody in production and just ask. If you went through an agent, ask your agent, how are you being listed with this? What's the credit going to read? And as a matter of fact, a good example for Gotham. So I got an email from someone in production. She wanted to make sure that she had the correct spelling of my name. And she did say this is a co-starring role. So if you're ever in doubt as to how the description should be, just ask somebody in production. Then you have a choice in the third column. You can put the name of the studio, the name of the production company. So for this one, I put NBC. And what I did for Gotham, and I want to share this with you because I think it would be helpful for you to hear. I have a slightly different revised version of my resume online than I do as a hard copy. And for Gotham, on my hard copy, which I attached to my resume, I have Fox Television. So that way, when I hand it out, people know, oh, yeah, this is the TV show that's on Fox. On places like 800 Casting and Casting Networks and some of those places, I actually, instead of putting down Fox Television, I put down the name of the director in the third column. The reason why I did that is because this is a director who has directed tons of television shows. So I'm thinking that maybe online there might be more either casting directors or maybe other directors who might be looking me up. And I figured, this is a very recognizable name. Maybe that will be more helpful to me than just putting down Fox Television. So anyhow, those are the two options. For film, once again, the name of the project. This was my character, Mayor Jim Green, and it was a supporting role. So I want to let people know the importance of the character because, unless you are a star on a show, you are a regular and you are a recognizable name and your character is recognizable, people, just won't know. Like, for instance, going back to Do No Harm, Dr. Stephen Leopold, who is this guy? I don't know who this guy is. So I let people know it's co-starring. And for theater, once again, it's, you can put the name of the play, you can put the name of the character, you can put down, once again, description, it's lead, chorus, etc. And let's say if you did a whole lot of plays in college or a local theater, you might not want to list the same name of the theater, 4 or 5 times. I mean, on one hand, it looks good. People like your work. They keep hiring you again. They keep, casting you again. That is good. But it's also helpful if people think that you are moving around more and working in a variety of areas. So, you can always mix things up and you can put down the name of the theater, the name of the college, the name of the director. It just looks like you've had more varied experiences, which can be good. But anyhow, the key thing is make sure you describe your credits in there. Special skills. Now, see, this is an area where even with little experience, on the job experience, you actually can get called in very easily depending on your special skills. So here's what you want to be thinking of. List any special skill that you have that can help a casting director. So if the casting director needs somebody who can ski, if the casting director needs somebody who speaks a foreign language, is a martial artist, is a musician, list those under special skills because that could get you brought in for an audition, even if you don't have a whole lot of other acting experience. But here's the key thing, and this also goes back to the honesty. Make sure you only list things that you are proficient in. And let me also just give you another real life example. Now, this had to do with a commercial, and there was somebody who told me the story of a woman who got cast in this commercial partially. I mean, it was her look, partially also because she could ride horses. And they asked, "Can you ride horses?" She said, "Yeah, of course I can ride horses." So she gets cast for this thing. They rent out a horse farm. They're spending a fortune on this project. And the woman is thinking, really, how hard can it be? I'm going to be on a horse. I'll probably walk around a little bit. When I was a little kid, my parents took me to a fair and, they led me on a horse. It will be simple. The woman had never really ridden. She was not an equestrian in any way. And she shows up. The director says, okay, so why don't you get on the horse? Why don't you just trot a little bit? Once you're comfortable, I want to see a full gallop. I want to see you flying by me. Hair's going to be flowing back. That's what I need to see for the shot. This woman walked over to the horse and realized they're big. They're huge animals. She freaked out. She couldn't even get on the horse. She would have been killed if she tried to gallop on this thing. And so she was immediately fired. Fortunately, the woman who was also on hold for the job but did not book it lived in the area. They called her immediately. She was still available. She came out, she did the job, everything worked out. The woman who lied about her special skills was fired by her agent. And she was very fortunate that they were able to get the shot done, because if not, she could have been held responsible for all the money lost. So make sure that you are proficient in any of the special skills. Look, you don't have to be a professional baseball player. You don't have to be um, an orchestral musician. But if you're proficient, if they're shooting a commercial, they're shooting a film, you look like you know what you're doing. That's what they want to see. So anyhow, just make sure that you're not lying about your special skills. So let me just show you. I mean, there are lots of things that you can put in here, and I'm just showing you a quick example. Anything from being double jointed. It's not always acting related. Sometimes it can be a little bit out of the box, but something that would be potentially used. I mean, you see people in commercials who have to contort their bodies, and they're like flipping over on desks and getting inside a suitcase. So anyhow, anything that you think could be helpful to a casting director and you are proficient in, then definitely put it in there as a special skill. So let's say you're 40 years old, you took French for your freshman semester in college, and you're thinking, well, if somebody gave me a script in French, I could probably read it. That's not typically what they're looking for. They want somebody who looks like and sounds like, not so much looks, but sounds like they live in France. Somebody who is fluent, somebody who has the right dialect for depending on what area. Just like sometimes people say, oh, I can do a British accent. Well, I don't even know what that means. I mean, do you sound like you're from Liverpool? Do you sound like you're from London? I mean, it's going to have a very different kind of sound. So anyhow, the point is ask. And I can tell you, I have turned down some jobs, especially when it comes to dialogue and dialects, because I just don't feel like I can do it believably, and I don't want to embarrass myself and show up on a set, and I also don't want to embarrass my agent. So anyhow, just make sure that you are proficient. Okay, so for classes, this also can be really, really important, especially if you're just getting started and you haven't had that much experience. People understand you have to start somewhere. We're not born in this world with an amazing resume. So if you've taken some classes, make sure that you list it on your resume, because an agent, casting director, producer, it could be any industry professional. They might look at your resume and say, you know what? Yeah, I see they're just getting started. But yeah, I know this teacher. This person's really good. And that will give you a lot of credibility. Now, here's a mistake that a lot of people make when they're listing classes. They will put down very generic kinds of topics. Acting, acting 101. That doesn't tell anybody what you took. So make it very specific. So like for instance here, acting for the camera. Okay, that lets people know you have taken that class. Maybe it's script analysis. Okay, maybe it's a teleprompter class. Whatever it is, improvisation. Let people know very specifically what you've taken. Let them know who you studied with and where. Where did it take place? And if it was, private, that's fine. You can just put down private lessons as well. But sometimes the classes can really make a huge difference. Here is something that changed my life. And fortunately, I was so lucky to get somebody to walk me through this process. And as a matter of fact, one of the special bonuses that you get is this step-by-step list of how to do this. Adding a photo to your resume. Now, most people would say, what do you mean add a photo to my resume? I've got a headshot and then I flip it over and there's my resume. Let me just share with you a little secret. Having your headshot, I like the upper right-hand corner of your resume, can be really helpful to you. And if you only have one headshot, then just use the exact same headshot that's on the front and place that in the upper right-hand corner of your resume. If you happen to have two different headshots, then put, the second one up there. Sometimes what people do is, let's say they have very different looks. Maybe they have a look with a beard and then they have one without a beard, and they will show both. Maybe somebody has wigs, extensions, whatever it is, they have a very, very different look. Sometimes it can be helpful, to show two different headshots. But what's really nice, when you have a headshot on the upper right-hand corner of your resume, after somebody's looked at your headshot and they flipped it over and they're looking at your resume, they can still see you. It's another opportunity for you to imprint your face in someone's brain. And that's always very helpful. So here's the tricky part. I used to struggle with this. I used to kick and scream and get so frustrated because most of the time I use Microsoft Word. And when you are adding a photo to Microsoft Word, all the text starts getting jumbled all over the place. And it was so difficult. It's simple. Here's what you do. If you're using Microsoft Word, now, all you have to do is click on Insert, and then you find the headshot that you want to use. Then, once you insert it onto the page, you just right mouse click on the photo, and then you're going to click on Wrap Text. And then a little drop down will pop up for you, and it will say Click Behind Text. And then you can move the headshot anywhere and it doesn't change the text around. So especially if you have your name, contact information, let's say if you have an email address or a website and that's centered on the top of your resume, you can easily just slide your headshot over to the right-hand corner. You can resize it. Most likely you will need to just grab the Shift button and then drag the corner so everything stays proportional and just place it in there. It is beautiful, it's simple, and it's just a tremendous time saver. So let me just show you a quick example. I know you can't really see the text too well, but I just want you to see the layout. And as you can see there, the headshot sits in there really nicely. It's clean looking, which is what you really want to have on a resume. I like to separate the columns so that you can easily jump from TV to feature films to theater, special skills, education. But anyhow, that's also one of your bonuses. You'll be able to see that one as well. So that's the information that I wanted to share with you about creating an effective resume. Like I said, there were a lot of questions that came in for me from people that were not able to attend live. If you do have any questions at all that you would like to ask now, you can either raise your hand or you can type your questions into the questions box and Jonathan will read them to me. In the meantime, I'm going to get started answering some of the questions that came in earlier in the week. So the first question that came in, should I have anything about radio on it? A lot of times you don't have the same conflicts with radio that you would with TV. But once again, I would just put TV, radio, list available upon request, makes it much simpler. Anything about modeling, like any runway shows? Once again, no, absolutely not. You don't want anything that has to do with modeling on because this is an acting resume. Should I use high gloss or special paper for my resume to make it stand out? No, you don't. You want to make it very simple. I like to use I always tell the printer, just use inexpensive paper because sometimes also with the glossy paper, there might be a glare if somebody's looking at it. There are lights overhead. It might make it a little bit more difficult to write on if somebody needs to make notes and things might smear a little bit. So just it's more economical and it's better for you. How many resumes should I print at a time? That's a good question. I don't like to print that many only because I'm hoping that I might take a class, update my resume. If you're doing theater, you might, be working and you want to update your resume. Maybe you just landed a new job. So for me, what I typically do, I might do 100 at a time. You probably don't even have to do that many. Um, Part of the reason for me doing 100 is I'm in a lot of situations where I could be handing out headshots, but I would say, probably 25, 50. Oh, what you can also do is check with the printer. There's a fairly high cost to having it cut, and the paper itself isn't really all that expensive. So that way, I that's another reason why I might print out 100, and it also gives me a lot of scrap paper. When all of a sudden I'm in a fortunate position where I've got to update my resume, take the old ones off, or because I won't staple 100 at a time. I might staple 20 at a time, and then I have 80 sitting around, and I can always use them as scrap paper if I needed to. Do you recommend that I have the photo and resume in color or in black and white? Definitely, I would go with black and white. Color is going to be more expensive. It's not necessary, and just in general, use your creativity for other things. Make your resume nice and simple. Um, Somebody's saying that their theater credits are pretty long. I guess she's done a lot of theater. Which one should I list? Which one should I place on my resume? So what I would do is this. I'd be thinking of one of two things. If you've done some theater that is more well known, people will know your character. Yeah, I would definitely have that in there. And another way that you can help sort out which ones to put in there is maybe put more of the more recent ones. Because like for me, it's not so much theater, although I've done theater, it's more of industrial films and training films, and I could literally put hundreds of them down. So I pick and choose the ones that I think help represent me the best, showing the different characters that I've played that will help me get booked for other ones. So that's what I do. Jonathan,
Aaron,
were there any questions that were coming in live?
I'm actually glad you asked that. Right when you said industrials, there was a question from Halima that asked, how should experience in industrials be actually listed on your resume?
Oh, okay. Well, absolutely. You can have a column for industrial films if you would like. And uh, I wouldn't list a ton of them because sometimes people also who aren't that familiar with, and they're called industrial films, training films, or educational films. And just for people who might not be that familiar with them, these are films that companies, organizations uh, put together, and they typically hire actors, and they are for training purposes. So let me give you some examples. I once did a training film for the United States Navy. Actually, I've done a lot of things for the Navy. And it was a training film. Actually, it was a very interesting film about suicide. And this is a film about what you should be looking out for if you are seeing people showing certain symptoms, certain signs, if they're talking in a certain way. This is what you need to do. There are other films that I've done, other training films where it might be uh, training people how to fix diesel engines. It could be laying fiber optic cables across the ocean. Uh, there was one where I played a senator, and it was for the National Education Association. Oh, I'm sorry, not National Education. It was a School Board Members Association. And there are a lot of associations that create industrial films as well. And it was teaching school board members when you go to Washington and you are pitching, the senator, the congressman on how to get more funding, get more things going for your particular state, this is what you need to do. And we did a lot of two different versions. One version where I completely blew people off. They came in and they were asking for things, and I would say, "Oh, that's a very good question. That's something I'm going to seriously consider looking into. And then thank you very much for coming to the office. I really appreciate it." And then they would show, so this is what you do if the person you're talking to talks to you like this. This is how you respond to it. So anyhow, so I've done lots of those, and yeah, what you're going to do is you can put the name of the company, or the title of it. You can put the character if you want. You can put the director, or the association. So that's how I would deal with industrials. But once again, I wouldn't list a ton of them because they're not necessarily respected by people who are casting you in film or television shows. People still have this misconception that it's just very stiff kind of acting. You just, stand and read off of a teleprompter, and there are on-camera narrators, and that's what they do in industrial films, but there's also some really, really good acting that takes place. So that's how I would handle industrials. Jonathan, were there any other live questions?
There was one more, and you may have touched it slightly. What should the size of the photo actually be that's on
Okay.
your resume?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know what? There really is no specific size because it's going to be partially dependent on how much text you have on there. When you look at my resume, you can use that as a really good guideline. The key thing is you want it you want people to be able to actually see it. You don't want a thumbnail. I mean, you want people to really be able to see your face, but you don't want it so big that it's overshadowing things, that it's grabbing people's attention. And so once again, just look at my headshot and on the resume. It'll give you a really good sample. But like I said, it will be really determined by how much text you have on the page. Okay, and if there are any other live questions, Jonathan, please just jump in, and I'm going to continue going along here. Um,
Okay, here's one for you. What do
okay,
you suggest I place on my resume as I have no experience?
okay. So let's say you've done absolutely nothing. You haven't done any TV commercials. You haven't done any extra work. Certainly, you're going to have some kind of training, or I hope that you've had some kind of training. And if so, you're going to list that information just like in the way that I said that, and how you should do it. Here's something else that you want to start doing. I would start contacting all of the local colleges, universities, community colleges in your area and find out if they have film classes. Assuming that they do, speak to the instructor and find out which classes have filmmaking, where students actually have to shoot films for the class. Then what you want to do is make sure that you are handing in a headshot so that you can be considered for a role in a student film. That's something that I would do very, very quickly, even whether you've had some experience or not. It's a great way to get experience. It's a great way to build up your resume and start putting information on there, and it would be under film. You don't have to say student film, it's a film. And the other thing too is you can also begin to build your acting reel. And that's a whole separate topic. Actually, I'm going to be doing a full day workshop, or a whole Saturday workshop on creating an acting reel. But basically, it's going to be a 1 minute reel of short snippets of a variety of different, acting jobs that you've had. The other thing that I would do is I would check out any meetup groups in your area and find out if there's one that deals with filmmaking. And you will find meetup groups throughout the world, and contact them, start showing up for meetings, seeing if there are student film, or not student films, but just films being shot. I would also find out if there are any organizations like Women in Film and Video in your area. It's wifv.org. And once again, you can go to some of their meetings and see if there are people who are shooting films. And that's what I would do. So if you don't have anything, you've got a name, you've got contact information, you will have your headshot on the front, you will have hopefully some classes that you've taken, um, and special skills. And sometimes maybe those special skills is what will get you called in for an audition. But that's what I would do. But just keep in mind, everybody starts somewhere. George Clooney started with a blank slate, and he had to book his very first job at some point. So, don't worry about it. Just get started and start building up your resume and get a lot of experience. Here's another question. I'm not in the union right now. Should I list non-union work on my resume? Um, no, I wouldn't do that. My thought is if you are in the union, then absolutely, you will put SAG-AFTRA on your resume. If it's not on there, people are going to assume that you're non-union, but there might be a union project. They might bring you in to read for it. And if they see non-union across your resume, they might have some second doubts. And once again, you're not trying to fool anybody or lie to anybody. If they ask you, are you a union member? You'll say no. But you still could get hired under the assumption that you will join if you book the job. So no, I would not list non-union on your resume. I have an exclusive contract with an agent in North Carolina. I want to book more jobs in other markets. Should I still keep my North Carolina agent information on my resume? Well, that's really more of a personal decision. I'm assuming that you are exclusive in North Carolina with your agent. Now, if it's exclusive throughout the world, then it's no question, of course, then you will. But if you only have exclusivity for North Carolina, you don't have to. But a short version of my answer is I would I would still be sending all of your jobs through your North Carolina agent. You don't necessarily have to list it because, and I can tell you, there are times where people are a little nervous going through an agent because they're thinking that maybe it's simpler, it's faster, I can go directly to the talent. Sometimes it's a financial thing. They think that they can offer you less money because you're not going to know what is the proper amount for this kind of job. But I would say, especially when you're first getting started, I would definitely send things through your agent because your agent can help vet out to make sure that it's a real job, that it's not some kind of crazy person, scammy kind of thing. The other thing too is your agent will help make sure that you get paid the correct amount. And the third reason for sending it through your agent and having, and maybe having your agent listed if you think that would be helpful to you is because it's showing your agent that you are making money, that you are booking jobs, people want you, and that will help put you higher up on the list when he or she is submitting you for jobs. And just talking about safety, and once again, I hate to have to keep harping on this, but I really feel it's important. If you're doing a job or a film with a student or somebody through a meetup group or any place, it could even be Craigslist. Some people will go to the gigs section in Craigslist and you will find information about TV commercials, about independent films and things like that. You've got to be very, very careful. You want to bring somebody with you to the audition. You're going to bring somebody with you to the shoot. If this is somebody you don't know, and just because they're a college student or they're claiming to be a college student, doesn't mean that they are smart, that they are safe. You've got to just make sure that you take good care of yourself. Um, okay, how do I really know if I'm proficient enough in a sport to honestly list it on a resume? So once again, like for me, I used to play baseball as a kid. Not that I'm going to be a major leaguer, not that I look like I could be playing in the major leagues right now. I'm a little old for that. But if they needed somebody in my age category, absolutely. I put baseball down. I look like I know what I'm doing because I do. So if it look, a good example would be, let's say, if you put down piano, you're not really sure, are you ready to give a, concert with your local symphony? Probably not. But if you can play basic things, sure, put it. I think that would be a very honest thing to do. And you know what? You can always you can always run it by your agent ahead of time. Tell your agent, this is what I can do. Do you think I should still get submitted for this particular audition? When's it up time? When is it time to update a resume? Well, you're going to update a resume when you've done some new work and you're ready to start deleting some of the older things that maybe aren't as impressive, things that maybe people aren't as familiar with. But really, anytime you take a new class, I would put it in there. Anytime you get a new job that you think would be helpful to you, definitely put it in there. Um, let's see. How far back, should you go when you're listing things? When this person was in high school, when she was in college, can she put those things? She's 30 now. Uh, Absolutely. Look, if you did the job, and I'm not saying paying job, but if you were in a play, whether it was high school, whether it was college, if you did it, put it in there. Now, if you've done things more recently and it is time to start editing your resume, you can start chopping off some of those older ones. But absolutely, you're being honest, you did it, so put it down. Also, this person won some individual acting awards from recognized organizations. Should she include that, or is it too far in the past? I would say, depending on what it is, there's something called the Helen Hayes Award, at least in the DC area. I mean, that's something that people know about. It's an acting award, absolutely. Hey, I guess if you've won an Academy Award, you probably don't have to list it on there because people probably know who you are. You probably don't even have a resume at that point. But if it's something that's recognizable to people in your community, sure, I would put that in. But if it's something that people really aren't going to know about, no. And I don't know why this reminded me of that, but I know sometimes people have said they've placed on their resume, honor society or debate. You won the debate team, contest. No, you don't want to put any of that information on your resume because um, people are just assuming that if you get cast in a role where you are, in a debating club, you're going to be able to pull it off. Just like sometimes people will say in special skills, can speak in front of large groups. Well, you're an actor. That's something that if you get cast, you're expected to do that. So I would not list something like that. Uh, Here's another question. I have some acting, technical, and directing experience. Should I include all those skill sets on one resume? No, not at all. You look, if you're trying to sell yourself as a director, yeah, then you're going to have a resume that is just for directing. If you're selling yourself as an actor, if I were a casting director, I really don't care that you are a director. I don't care that you are a great writer. Doesn't make any difference to me. I'm casting films, I'm casting TV shows, I'm casting uh, TV commercials. Those things are irrelevant to me. So for your acting resume, stick with acting kinds of information. Um, let's see, let me go to the next page here. Like I said, there were lots of questions that popped in. When listing training, let me just get rid of this. When listing training, should I break it down to all the specific methods covered or just use a typical classical training? No, actually, I would make it specific. Let people know, was it Stanislavski? What kind of training did you have? And once again, make it very specific. I think that that's very helpful for people to hear. What colors and formatting are most appropriate, black and white or something that will grab people's attention? And once again, I would stay away from, and look, there are people who might have different thoughts about this. I would stay away from um, really trying to make it too complicated. Now, what some people will do is they might, let's say if somebody has had an extensive theater background, they've just done a tremendous amount of theater and they're continuing to try to do a lot of theater, then you might even want to have a separate resume just for theater. So that way, when you're actually auditioning for a theater piece, that's what you have. Um, if you are auditioning, let's say in Los Angeles, I wouldn't lead off with lots of theater, only because in Los Angeles, theater isn't that big. Now, if you're in New York, yeah, it's more respected, and yeah, you certainly would want to list theater in there. But a lot of times it's the area of work that you want to get. That's how you want to lead. So if you're trying to get film work and you've had extensive film work previously, then start off with film. If you've had more TV then and you want to do more TV, then lead off with TV. Or if you've just had a lot of work in one of those areas, you can always lead off with that. But theater, I would certainly put some theater on your resume, but if you are going to mix it up, I would have more information about other areas. Because, like I said, if you're trying to audition for theater, I would just keep it, strictly theater based. And here's the very last thing I just thought about, and I just wanted to make sure you guys know before we wind things up here. I highly recommend that you have a copy of your resume on your cell phone. And the reason for that is because there have been times where either I was traveling, maybe I was even doing a job. And typically when I'm on a set, I don't look at my phone, but maybe if I'm on a long break, or I'm sitting in a trailer, or I'm, having lunch or dinner, sometimes I will check in on my phone. Sometimes I just don't want to be distracted. If something came up, I don't want to know about it because I'm really focused in on what I need to do on a set. But there have been some times where I've checked it out. Somebody said, "Hey, I need you to send me a headshot and resume immediately." And so, I just keep those on my cell phone. Sometimes people want a photograph taken that day, not a professional headshot, so they can see what I look like that day and send it along with a resume. So always keep that on your cell phone. That can be really, really helpful to you. So if there aren't any other questions that popped up, let me wind things up here. Uh, Within 3 days, you're going to have access to the recording of the workshop, along with all the bonus materials. I will send you the information so that you can easily log in. This was great. I had a great time sharing this information with you. If you have any additional questions about resumes or anything, you can always go to my facebook.com/how to model page. Or how you can always reach me at howtomodel.com. Those are great ways of getting to me, and I'm more than happy to try to answer any questions that you have. I've got 11 other really, really great workshops happening, one every month. I will send you a link to give you more information about my season pass membership, where you will have tremendous discounts off, in case you're not a member yet, off of every online workshop. Plus you get over $1,600 worth of acting and modeling materials. We also have monthly meetup sessions where we get a chance to sit and talk online, share information, and but I'll send you that information as well. I am Aaron Marcus. This was great, and I'm really glad you got a chance to watch this today. See ya.